Hello, everyone. I'm Kyler Cheatham, the host of Digital Transformation Podcast, the podcast of all things technology, agnostic, and independent. Joining me today is Director of Strategy and Transformation, Adam Cheatham, and we are going to talk through some pain points in technology implementation. So thanks so much for joining me today, Adam.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So Adam, when it comes to implementing a new technology, what are some of the technical pain points that clients experience within their overall experience?
Yeah, so I would say that there are the two biggest technical challenges that we see clients have are one, just the understanding of the technology in general. A lot of our folks that implement modern ERP come from a green screen, and understanding what it is available and how it is you make use of that from a technical perspective and how you build that is important, and that's a significant pain point because people don't realize how much of the implementation they're responsible for. You know, the putting in data and filling out user profiles and stuff like that. Those are tend to be things that the client is responsible for setting up, and the level of technical specificity within that is a significant pain point, particularly as it comes to being able to learn and understand modern ERP. The second on the technical side of things is the data workload. Everybody underestimates the amount of work is going to put into getting your data scrubbed and cleaned. That's not just your operational data, your item masters, customer masters, general ledger, bills of materials, routings, all of those things. But it also includes any of the data that you need to come from your ERP and into some type of maybe an EDI transaction or things like that. So the kind of data that's necessary and the amount of work it's going to take, that is certainly something that surprises a lot of people. And let's be honest, pouring through millions of lines of data is a pain point in and of itself.
I don't know, that sounds like a really exciting activity. So
It has to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It most definitely has to be optimized in order to be successful. I wonder if we could back up a little bit and just talk about the significance of the actual software selection process within implementation success.
So the easiest way to put that is that the best case scenario you have available to you is selecting the right software and implementing it well. Now you could select the wrong software and still implement that well and come out ahead, but selecting the right software and implementing it badly is a failure still. So I would say that from a perspective of the software selection side of it, getting an appropriate fit is important. Getting a perfect fit, maybe not so much. I think that the overall challenge that we see with folks is focusing too much on getting perfect and starting to lose a little bit of the overall look at things, which is let's find a good system at a good price and implement it well. Not everybody needs everything, and that's okay. So as you start thinking about the differentiating requirements, selecting the software based on those differentiating requirements, what makes you unique and what makes you complex, are the things that you should select software for from a technical perspective. I think it's worth mentioning also, though, as you select software, you're inherently also selecting a system integrator, and there are a lot of pain points that people have with their system integrators that we can dig into.
Absolutely. I think I would be curious to know if one software system is harder to implement over the other.
Well, that's a great question, and I would say that there's not going to be really any software system that you're going to have an easier time implementing over another. The best way of approaching it is to find a good fit in software, and that's how you're going to see things get easier. ERP is not simple; it is complex, and one of the hardest tasks that we have as a partner to our clients is being able to coach them through when something is truly wrong in their implementation and they should do something dramatic, um, or when it's just hard because implementations are hard. There's by nature,
Mhm.
it's sometimes really hard to tell the difference between those things without somebody who's been there, seen it, done it, and can tell you that's normal. Sorry, it sucks, but that's normal. Or yeah, that's way out of left field, way out of line, and we need to do something to remediate that problem immediately. Knowing the difference between those things can be in and of itself the difference between a success and a failure.
So how do you know the difference between those two things?
I knew you were going to ask that. Okay. Part of it's just through experience, right? Like, when people come to me and to our consultants and say, "Hey, I'm having a hard time understanding the system's language, how it is things are framed in there, what it is they're called, things like that." That's a part of the hard work. I'm having a hard time getting through and creating an appropriate test script. Um, that's hard work. And surprise, that's your job, not the system integrators. More often than not, system integrators are not going to write test scripts. They're simply going to tell you that you need to. And so, how do you do that? Why am I all of a sudden doing this? And now, how do I tell the difference between a good script and a bad script? Those are the types of things that are normal activities that may fall on the client's desk just because that's the way that these things work. There are other things that would fall more on what we would expect to be the responsibility of the system integrator. And a lot of the expert witness pain points that we've seen in the past have revolved around the role of the system integrator as a coach through this technical process. And very often, when we see significant failures, we find that the system integrator said, it's your job to write the test scripts, it's your job to test the software. And they provide no active input. I don't know how many expert witness cases I've been a part of that say that the software failed because the requirements were bad, and that's what the system integrator accuses the client of. And then we've said, okay, so what industry is your client in? Oh, well, they're in the business of making food ingredients by blending this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, and where in that interaction did you expect that they would know how to write an actual ERP requirement? That question never gets asked. It gets assumed mostly because it's convenient for the system integrators, not because that skill set exists at the client.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about implementation partners. Can you kind of lay out at a top line who helps implement new technologies?
Yeah, so there are a number of roles that can be involved in an implementation. So at a high level, you have three different kinds of software providers. One of them is a software vendor, somebody who sells ERP. One of them is called a system integrator, somebody who implements ERP. And the third role is a value added reseller, somebody who takes ERP, adds their own intellectual property to it, and then implements it. The roles in that can overlap, they can be intertwined. Very often, you may find that you are buying software from one provider, and that provider is also implementing it. For example, we have a client who's implementing Epicor right now with Epicor. That's pretty normal. There are also cases where you have folks that will sell you the software, but they won't implement it. You will implement with somebody else. That's called a system integrator, system implementer, SI for short. And in that case, we have a client, for example, right now who is implementing NetSuite. We have a client right now who is implementing NetSuite. they pay NetSuite for their licenses, but they're actually implementing with a third-party provider system integrator called centric. And it's centric who is doing all of the configuration of the software and all of those things. And NetSuite remains in the background to collect the checks and get involved if they need to. The third is called the value-added reseller. We see this fairly frequently in specific types of markets. Food and beverage is a good one. I would also consider things like the metals industry, mining industry, the cannabis industry is starting to develop its own value-added resellers where somebody takes a core package of an ERP system. We'll take Microsoft Dynamics, for example, because they're one of the most frequent in this space. And Microsoft says to one of their partners, here's our code. You're a qualified enough partner to take our code and write your own within it. And so that partner goes and does that. For example, there's a partner out there called Crow that implements Microsoft Dynamics, and they have a metals accelerator, is what they call their intellectual property for this. What that means is that value-added reseller, you may buy your software licenses from Microsoft, but you're going to implement it with your VAR, and you are going to also pay that VAR for that proprietary technology, that metals accelerator that shows things in tons and those types of languages that fit with the industry and also flow the way that the industry tends to work, whether it be metals or food and beverage or anything. Apparel is another good one that's really hard to get right, especially as you start talking about t-shirt sizes and colors with specific logos all in one item master or one item number to have the one t-shirt that can be modified across a number of areas based on different variables is difficult for a lot of software systems, and being able to handle that textile industry is one of the specialties that sometimes you'll find in software that comes from a VAR.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that great overview. That's really helpful. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into some of the process pain points that some of our clients experience when implementing a new software or a new technology.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Welcome back to Digital Stratosphere. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host, joined by Adam Cheatham, who is Director of Strategy and Transformation here at Third Stage Consulting Group. Today, we're talking about some pain points within the implementation process. We just covered a lot of the technical aspects, some partners, and now we're going to dig into the processes. So I can assume, Adam, from your experience, it can be hard to kind of map out what your needs are from an organization standpoint for business processes. So I'm wondering if you can kind of give us some insight as to some pain points you've experienced on the process side of implementation.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest pain points when it comes to the process side of things is the difficulty in the conversation, which is, should we modify our process or should we modify the software? And a lot of pain points come more from modifying the software than from modifying processes. What we find is that the clients who know when they can just change their process to work the way the system does, and they're willing to accommodate that, have fewer pain points in the process area than those who are trying to build the new system to work like the old one. Not only is that an expensive problem that you have if you're coding your new system to look like the old one, but every time you modify software, you change one line of code or one small function, and then upstream and downstream, the places where that connects needs to be modified to connect to it differently. And as you change another thing, and then you change another thing, it compounds. And what you find is that that can create significant performance issues when it comes to how fast the system works, and how quickly you can use it, and how quickly you can get information out of it if it's too heavily modified. So that's generally the most basic way of looking at it. We always recommend that if you are having to consider changing software or changing your processes, you consider what that process is and whether or not it's critical to the way you do business today. Is it part of your competitive advantage in the marketplace? Is it a sufficiently complex process that must be done in a certain way, or your business doesn't function as it is? Those are things that are good qualifications for modifying the software itself. If it's well, we've always done it this way, and I've got one client, one customer who we've been supplying this custom report for 40 years. Like, okay, and what if you asked that customer if they were okay with a slightly different report? Most of the time, they're modifying the reports you send them anyway. So it doesn't matter. Those questions where you start to ask why, and if you ask why and the answer gets to something a bit more superficial, it's always been done that way. Is a great example. Or I don't know. Is another good example. Why is it done that way? Those are good candidates for processes that you are more likely to want to change your process to mirror the software. And those are significantly difficult conversations as you start to figure out the nuances between the two.
So to summarize, what should come first? The technology you select and then the process, or the process establishment and then the technology?
It depends. So there are some processes,
Consultant answer.
right? Well, but I've got great examples for you. So there are some cases where a process can change hands multiple times, passing a piece of paper here, there, and to this person, that person, and it goes back and forth, this, that, and the other, where you can rearrange the steps in the process, or you can rearrange how it is you're putting away inventory, or how it is you're pulling inventory into production, and those types of things. Those types of processes will reveal themselves in the requirements gathering workshops. And they're good ones. There are always low-hanging fruit that you can implement today to gain improvements. Nobody's perfect, even in their existing software. Those ones you should start considering right away. But when you start thinking about the difference between software process improvements that are software dependent and that aren't software dependent, you start to get a little bit more complex in the answering of that question, which is, well, we can improve this process in these spaces, and then we can install a manual workaround until the software gets here. Maybe not. How painful is that manual workaround? Is it just downloading a spreadsheet here and then uploading the same there, or are we adding some significant effort? That conversation on what you can do before you implement and what you're going to do because you implement is different. Excellent.
Those are all great considerations, and it sounds honestly entirely confusing. So if you are one of our listeners and are considering a new technology, what's the best place to just start to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success on the process side?
With where you want to be when you grow up. What are your business objectives and what are your business goals, and how is technology enabling them today? Technology should always enable you to achieve your business goals. When you're having conversations with IT, which are, I need to be able to do this so that we can open a new product line or this, that, or the other, and IT says, no, you can't do that. The system doesn't work that way. That's a terrible answer. And that means you are now in a space where your technology is inhibiting you from growing the way that you want to. And it might be time to start considering replacement of software. So it should always start with where you want to be and what objectives you want to achieve as a business. And then the second step is, what are your current state processes and how do we devise a future state from them that respects who you are today and the things that work, and also enables your business to grow in the future and fits with those objectives.
Excellent. That's great insight. Thank you. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the people side and some pain points that can be associated with implementation. I'm Kyler Cheatham, and you're listening to Digital Stratosphere.
If you are involved in any sort of digital transformation or business change initiative, you will want to download the 2021 Digital Transformation Report. With its comprehensive overview of business and technology trends and best practices, this report is a must-have guide for any transformation project or executive team. Download this free report by visiting Third Stage Consulting at thirdstage-consulting.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about us or download independent reports, videos, and other best practices. Again, visit thirdstage-consulting.com today to learn how to take your transformation to the third stage of success.
Welcome back to Digital Stratosphere, the podcast of all things technology agnostic and independent insight. I'm Kyler Cheatham, your host, and I'm here with Adam Cheatham, Director of Strategy and Transformation here at Third Stage Consulting Group. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you.
So we're going to dive into some people-centric pain points for a technology implementation. So Adam, I know we've discussed the process side and the technology side, but what are some of the pain points when it comes to people and human behavior in technology implementation?
Yeah, I'd say that the one that nobody thinks of, that is a real frustration for just about everybody when they learn it the hard way, is actually two lessons that people learn the hard way that nobody ever thinks of. Number one is that your system integrator is not as qualified as you think they are. They are pulling resources from an organization that is plug and play. Let's bring a new body to the table, and understanding when you have bad system integrator resources is another one of those times where you got to be able to understand, what do we have on our hands here? Is this person bad, or are they is what they do just complicated and difficult? Understanding the difference in having a bad project manager, for example, and what that means from your system integrator side, that everything's going to go through that project manager. Just the same way all of your architecture is going to be created by their systems architect. Those two roles, for example, if you have somebody who's underqualified in either of those roles, you could find that out the hard way late. Not everybody that works for a system implementer is good at their job. The same way, not everybody who works anywhere is good at their job. So that sometimes comes as a rude awakening for clients, that they have people who are not qualified, or that turn over, right? Your growth is a part of life. And when somebody that was very good decides to take a job making more money somewhere else, what do we do with that? And finding out the hard way in that regard, how good that person was in comparison to the bad person that's probably going to fill their space, is a rude awakening. There's another part of this that could one day warrant its own podcast, but the way things work in the software development industry is not what people expect. So the second thing is learning how the software industry works on their own dime, which means that software systems are built over time. It's not something where you build a software package and all of a sudden you're implementing the same exact package with the same functionality for every client that you ever work with. I like the example of Oracle Enterprise Business Suite. It's been around for quite a very, very long time, and it can do anything. But that's because
Anything?
well, lots of anything in the ERP space, yes. And is probably what I think I would consider the most mature software package in the industry. Now the challenge with that is that you can't buy it anymore. Oracle won't sell it to you. They want you to believe that Oracle ERP Cloud has all of the same functionality in it as Oracle Enterprise Business Suite. It just simply is not the case. And I've had clients who were going to start their implementation on EBS, go live on a number of locations, then move into ERP Cloud and finish off the remaining locations, and then move the original locations into ERP Cloud with the thought that there's a direct upgrade path between the two of them. And Oracle was happy to lead them to believe that that was going to work. It did not. And so what ended up happening is they're all going on Oracle EBS because that's what works. And so my point here is that every time a software system is implemented, code is added to the core. And as time goes on, that software is upgraded, updated, new patches are put in, new functionality is added because enough clients wanted it. But that's not done on clients' on the software vendor's dime. It's done live, implementing your software at for your business in the middle of creating this new functionality. And so this conflict here that is, well, we'll just get the client to pay for our research and development is rampant in the ERP space. I think it's rather unfair and misleading. And this is something that a lot of clients find out the hard way, that the functionality that they thought was there is only in the previous versions, and they are going to have to wait until either one of their clients is willing to pay for the customization or enough clients ask for it that they're willing to take on building it internally themselves. And if you're going to wait for everybody else to ask for it, you're going to be waiting a long time, because those decisions aren't made based on who needs what the most. It's based on what it is the vendor wants to tackle first.
I feel like you're talking your way to another trolling Google review right now.
Well, bring it on.
The software whistleblower of his generation, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I mean, it's not like you take your car to the mechanic so that they can add things to it on your dime. You know,
Sure.
so, you take it there to get it fixed and get it. And when you drive it off the lot, you expect it to work the way that you want it to, day in and day out, as opposed to say, oh man, how many times have I heard somebody say it's on the roadmap? That means, so for anybody who's listening, if a software vendor ever tells you it's on the roadmap, that means one of two things, potentially both things. Number one, it means it's not built yet. That means it doesn't exist. And number two, it may never, because the roadmap is in the future, and who knows how long how far that roadmap goes out, and what it is they're going to prioritize on when to build which functionality.
Well, all good, important considerations in our bucket of professional skepticism that we always preach to our client community and just our overall audience, because awareness really is power in that conversation. So we talked about some external forces. I wonder if you might touch on some internal human dynamics when it comes to implementing, or any pain points associated with that.
Yeah, so we'll tackle two components of that as well. One of them is your team that's responsible for the implementation, and some of the most common pain points are when your team starts to have to take on more than they thought they were expecting to, because they expected the system integrator to do more. And a great example of this is when EDI comes into the picture. Nobody does their own EDI implementations. They partner with somebody else. So you're going to end up with an EDI partner who is a third party to this process. And now you may expect that your system integrator would manage that part of the project since they brought that partner to the table, and you are going to be sadly disappointed. That's your job. You now have to manage that EDI vendor, the new tax vendor, or the payroll vendor that you started to add into this as well. So all of those things are examples of when the client finds out that they expected more out of the system integrator than they were ever going to get, and now those responsibilities fall on them. Identifying those things early is really helpful, and having somebody who's been through it, either on your team or by way of a third-party partner that specializes in program management of these types of things, is a good, strong position to be in. The second part of the people challenge that I wanted to cover is just the sheer magnitude of change. You got people running around your business with their hair on fire, trying to figure out how to get this software implemented. And everybody sees that. Everybody sees how much that core team is working so hard to get this up and running. And that creates a little bit of fear in people. And there's a perceived negative impact to each individual at some point in an implementation, and understanding what that means to each of them and being able to approach it from a change management perspective. Not here is your new change management document. Surprise, surprise, it's just a training video. I'm talking more like change management tactics that lead towards helping people understand what processes they're going to change, how their role is going to change, and what their responsibilities are going to be in the future. All of those things create a sense of fear in an implementation, and from a change management perspective need to be considered heavily so that your people are ready to use the software when you go live. Because if they're not, they might give it that good old college try until they realize that it's going to be faster if I just open my spreadsheets and get back into that.
So if you were to give the number one pain point that your clients experience when going through a software implementation, what would that be?
Not investing enough in change management, and real change management, organizational change management that is focused on the people who are going to have to be the ones that actually administer the change themselves. That's easy. Nobody ever complains about spending too much money on change management, and almost all of the folks that come to us after they've gone live are asking for more help with change management because they didn't get that right during their implementation.
Well, you heard it here, folks. One of our most technical directors here at Third Stage is talking about change management. So it all comes full circle. But thank you so much for this great insight today. And if you would like some more resources, please check out our 2021 Digital Transformation Report. We also have a full podcast over on our Ground Control sister podcast that features vendor management and SI from our new head of Africa that would couple well with this conversation. So we'll have to kind of dig into that a bit more in future episodes. But thank you again, Adam, for your time today. And just a reminder, we put out new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My interviews with Third Stage stakeholders are on Wednesday. So please subscribe to our channel, and please head over to subscribe to our sister podcast, Ground Control. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.